My girlfriend told me. I don't want any drama. I replied, got it. Then, I packed my things, left the keys on the table, accepted a job in Texas, and left in silence. From afar, I watched her fairy tale graduation turn into an expensive lesson in respect. My name is Caleb. I am 26 years old, and until 3 months ago, I lived in a small apartment just outside of Atlanta while finishing my master's degree in information systems. I worked part-time in IT support and had a pending job offer from a company in Austin that I kept pushing back because my girlfriend Brooke was graduating in the spring and needed stability. Brooke is 24. We had been together for a little over 2 years. She was finishing her communications degree and treating her upcoming graduation like it was a royal coronation. Photo shoots booked, custom dress ordered, caption drafts written weeks in advance. We lived together in an apartment that was technically in both our names, but I handled most of the bills because she said she didn't want financial stress before launching her career. From the outside, we looked solid. She posted things about building her future with her better half and tagged me in stories about her late-night study sessions. But behind this carefully curated feed, the tone had changed months earlier. It started with little details. She would roll her eyes if I questioned her spending. She called me negative if I suggested being careful before the end of her student loan grace period. She spun it like I was trying to kill the vibe. Then the phrase appeared, I don't want any drama, Caleb. She used it every time I brought up an uncomfortable topic. The fact that she was texting a guy from her internship at 1 a.m., not drama. Canceling our anniversary dinner because her friends wanted to go bar hopping, not drama. Joking publicly about how lucky I was that she hadn't upgraded yet, definitely not drama. The slightest objection from me was drama. About 6 weeks before her graduation, I received a formal job offer from the Austin company. Better salary, relocation bonus, real career path. I showed it to her that same night, expecting at least a conversation. She barely looked at it. So what? You're just going to run away and leave right before my graduation? This is a mess. I don't want any drama. I told her it wasn't running away. It was a career move. She replied that timing was everything and that if I cared about her, I would wait until she was settled. I asked her what being settled meant. She said she didn't know yet, but that she didn't want to deal with the complications of a long-distance relationship during her graduation glow up. Glow up. That was the word she used. A week later, we had an argument because I asked her why she had posted a picture with that same guy from her internship, Ryan, with the caption, "Future connections are important." She said I lacked self-confidence. I don't want any drama, Caleb. If you're going to start with this, maybe we need some space. That sentence hit differently because, for the first time, it sounded less like a boundary and more like an opening. And that is when I stopped arguing. So, I started taking action. Not dramatically, not passive-aggressively, just differently. The next time she said she didn't want any drama, I nodded and said, got it. And that was it. No follow-up questions, no justifications, no explaining that basic respect is not drama. I simply removed all friction from the equation. She seemed almost relieved at first. When she canceled our Friday dinner for a last-minute networking event, I didn't protest. I told her to have fun and stayed home to work on my certification modules for the Austin job. She gave me a suspicious look on her way out, as if she expected resistance. When she posted another graduation countdown with a filter and Ryan complimenting her in the comments, I didn't ask any questions. Instead, I muted her stories. I stopped reacting and started preparing. I emailed the Austin recruiter to say I was ready to accept the offer. I asked about relocation timelines, housing assistance, and start dates. We locked in mid-June, 2 weeks after her ceremony. I didn't announce it at home. At the apartment, I became efficient. I paid my half of the bills in advance. I stopped covering her extra expenses. When she ordered food from DoorDash, I no longer automatically sent her money via Venmo. As for my part, if she forgot to transfer the money for the utilities to me, I reminded her once, not 3 times. The first time I didn't chase after her for it, she noticed. You're quiet lately. Yeah, just focused. The thing with people who accuse you of creating drama is that they get uncomfortable when there isn't any. A few days later, she tried to start a little argument about me not being enthusiastic enough about her photo shoot. I had simply said the photographer did a good job. That was it. That's it. That's all you have to say. I shrugged. It looks professional. She stared at me as if looking for the button she used to push. Finally, she said it again. I don't want any tension. Got it. She literally blinked. That word was starting to irritate her. Meanwhile, I started sorting my things quietly. Important documents in a folder, clothes I hadn't worn in months into donation bags for Goodwill. I canceled the auto pay for the internet from my bank account and called the provider to switch it to joint billing. She didn't notice anything at first. Then, one evening, she asked if I still planned on waiting for Texas. I looked at her calmly. I accepted the offer. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was freezing. Are you serious? Yeah. She let out a dry little laugh. So you're choosing a job over us? I didn't correct her. I just said, you said you didn't want any drama. And that's when I saw the first glimmer of something on her face that wasn't confidence. After telling her I accepted the offer, she didn't blow up. She recalibrated her attitude. Over the following week, she became unusually affectionate. Spontaneous hugs while I was doing the dishes, sitting closer than usual on the couch, posting old photos of us with captions about personal growth and loyalty. It would have been cute if it hadn't felt so strategic. One evening, about 3 weeks before graduation, she brought up a celebration trip she wanted to take right after the ceremony. A beach house in Destin, Florida, with her friends for a few days, a grand kickoff to adulthood. She said it casually. You'll still be here then, right? My start date in Austin was 2 weeks after graduation. I said, yeah, I'll still be here. She smiled like she had secured something. Then she added, I just don't want anything complicated during this time. Like no weird conversations about moving or whatever. I need this to be perfect. Perfect. I nodded. Got it. That word again. Her smile tightened. Around this time, I noticed something else. Ryan started showing up more often. Not physically at the apartment, but digitally. Comments, inside jokes, and subtle references that didn't include me. I didn't confront her. That would have been creating drama. Instead, I started making calls for logistics. I spoke to the leasing office and confirmed that I could remove myself from the apartment lease at renewal time with a 30-day notice. I checked the fine print regarding early termination fees. I requested a quote for a small storage unit in Austin. Then, I slowly started packing. Not boxes everywhere, just small, imperceptible changes. My books disappeared from the shelf, and my extra shoes left the closet. The framed photo of us at last year's Christmas party ended up in a drawer. That one, she noticed. Where did the photo go? I figured I'd rearrange things. Why? No particular reason. She watched me for a second as if trying to decide whether to escalate things. Then she said, You're being weird. I shrugged. Keeping things simple, no drama. That phrase irritated her even more when it came from me. The real turning point happened the week of her graduation rehearsal. She came in late, flushed with excitement, talking about how perfectly aligned everything felt. Career prospects, fresh starts, and new energy. Then she said something casually, almost in passing. I just need to make sure the right people are around me when I level up. The right people. I asked what that meant. She waved the question away. People who don't complicate things. I nodded slowly. That night, after she fell asleep, I booked my one-way flight to Austin for the Monday following her beach trip, and I decided I wouldn't announce it. Graduation week arrived like a movie premiere. Her dress was laid out on the bed days in advance. Nails done, hair appointment booked, photographer confirmed. She was glowing. I'll give her that, not because of me, but because of the image she was embodying. I remained unfazed. I helped her steam her gown. I drove her to the rehearsal. I took pictures when she asked me to. I smiled when her family hugged me and said how proud they were of both of you. Those words sounded like a mere formality. The night before the ceremony, she sat on the edge of the bed scrolling through comments on her post. Ryan had commented something along the lines of on to bigger stages. She liked it immediately, then turned to me. Promise me you won't do anything weird tomorrow. Weird how? Like no heavy talks, no emotional stuff. I just want positive energy, no drama. Got it. She exhaled as if I had just signed a contract. The ceremony itself was predictable. Caps in the air, speeches about the future, endless photos. I stood next to her in most of them. I held her flowers. I carried her spare shoes. I played my part perfectly. At the dinner afterward, her friends toasted to the new chapter. One of them joked about who would still be around for the next phase. Brooke laughed and said, We'll see who survives it. She squeezed my hand as she said it, but she didn't look at me. I didn't squeeze back. The next morning, she left for her destined beach trip with her friends. I helped her load her suitcase into her car. She kissed me lightly and said, "Don't overthink things while I'm gone." I replied, "I won't." As soon as she drove off, I went up to the apartment and started packing for real. No anger, no rushing, just efficiency. My clothes folded into 2 large suitcases, important documents in my carry-on, laptop, hard drive, certifications, passport. I left the shared furniture alone. The couch, the table, the TV. She cared about aesthetics. I cared about mobility. By Sunday night, almost everything I owned was gone, except for a few basic items so the apartment wouldn't look empty just in case she came back early. On Monday morning, I stripped the bed, washed my sheets, and packed the rest of my belongings. Then, I took my copy of the key off the keychain. I placed it neatly on the kitchen counter. No words, no explanation. I locked the door behind me and left for the airport. She didn't notice anything until Wednesday. She texted me on Wednesday afternoon. "Did you move your stuff?" I was already in Austin, sitting in a temporary corporate apartment that smelled like new carpet and fresh paint. I replied 3 hours later. "Yeah, that was it." 5 minutes passed. "What do you mean?" "I mean I moved out." She called immediately. I let it ring once before answering. "Caleb, what the hell is this?" I calmly told her that my start date was in 7 weeks and that I didn't want to cause any drama during her graduation glow-up. There was silence on the other end of the line. "You couldn't even tell me. You asked for positive energy." That irritated her. "Don't twist my words. That's not what I meant." I didn't argue. I just said I thought getting some space was better than having tension. She exhaled sharply. "So that's it. You just leave like this while I'm not there. You said you didn't want any heavy conversations." Another pause. "Are you breaking up with me?" I thought about it for a second. I said I wasn't doing anything dramatic. I had accepted a job and moved. That was all. She didn't like the lack of an argument. I could hear it in her breathing. "This is childish, Caleb." I said I wasn't trying to win anything. I was just aligning my actions with what she had asked of me. She let out a little laugh, but it lacked confidence. So I come home to an empty apartment with a key on the counter. I told her I had left the shared belongings. The lease was still active until it ended. The month's rent was already paid. She changed her angle of attack. "People are going to ask where you are. Tell them I moved for work. You're making me look like an idiot." I didn't respond to that because what she really meant was that I had stepped out of the frame without warning. That evening, she posted a series of photos recapping her graduation. No mention of me, no tags, just captions about independence and taking control of her life. Ryan commented within minutes. "Proud of you." I muted the conversation and went to bed early. The next day, she texted me again. "Are we done?" I typed slowly. "You said you didn't want any drama." And for the first time in 2 years, I meant it exactly as it was written. Her last message stayed on my screen for a full minute. "Are we done?" I stared at it longer than expected. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I knew what she was really asking. She wasn't asking if the relationship was over. She was asking if she still had access to me. Access to comfort, access to a backup option, access to the safety net she assumed would always be there. I replied with a single line. "I think we already were." 3 little dots appeared immediately. "So that's it. 2 years, and you ghost me like this." I didn't reply. She sent another one. "You're proving my point about how you always cause drama." That one almost made me laugh. I had packed my boxes quietly, paid my share, and left the key clearly visible on the counter. No yelling, no accusations, no public scandal. If that was drama, then she needed a new dictionary. Another message came through. "Ryan says this is manipulative behavior." And that was the moment everything became perfectly clear. Ryan says, not I feel, not I think. Ryan says, I felt something completely shift inside me. Not anger, just detachment. I opened our text thread, scrolled back through the messages, and realized how many of my responses over the past year were explanations, defense mechanisms, and justifications. This time, I didn't explain myself. I blocked her number, then Instagram, then Snapchat. I blocked her emails just in case. Not out of spite, but for the sake of closure. I didn't announce it. I didn't send a final paragraph. I didn't give a speech about respect. I just cut the line of access. For the first time in years, my phone was quiet in a way that wasn't heavy. 2 days later, a mutual friend texted me. "Brooke is spiraling. What happened? I kept it simple. Moved for work, keeping things clean. Apparently, she had posted a vague story about betrayal and men who can't handle strong women. Then she deleted it. Then, she reposted the graduation photos like nothing had happened. From afar, I watched the narrative try to reshape itself without me in it. But there was something that didn't work the same way anymore, and the real lesson didn't appear immediately. It unfolded slowly. During the first 2 weeks after I blocked her, nothing dramatic happened. No fake accounts trying to follow me. No calls from unknown numbers in the middle of the night. No public meltdown, just silence. And that silence triggered something interesting. It forced her to construct a version of the story without my participation. Through mutual friends, bits and pieces reached me, not because I was asking questions, but because people talk. At first, she framed it like I was impulsive. She said I couldn't handle her moving on to a more important stage in her life, that I felt threatened by her success. Success was an interesting word considering she didn't have a job lined up yet. Then the internship ended, and Ryan didn't get a full-time position either. That detail slipped out casually to those still paying close attention. Apparently, the future connections she was promoting weren't turning into actual offers. She had assumed something would fall into place after graduation. It didn't. Her student loan repayment schedule kicked in 30 days later. The apartment lease renewal was approaching, and for the first time since I'd known her, there was no stable backup plan sitting quietly next to her. One Friday night, a mutual friend FaceTimed me. "Man, she thought you would have called by now." I asked why. He shrugged. She said, "He always ends up caving." That gave me a weird feeling. Not because it hurt, but because it confirmed the pattern. She didn't think I would leave. She thought I would create just enough tension to prove I cared, and then back down so she could reset the dynamic. Instead, I had removed myself from the game entirely. Around this time, I started seeing subtle changes in her online tone. The captions about leveling up slowed down. The posts about the wonderful side of graduation stopped. More generic quotes about personal growth through pain started to appear. Then one night, she posted something striking. "Sometimes silence says more than words ever could." I almost smiled at that because she was right. The silence had said it all. And from over 900 miles away, I could see the graduation fairy tale narrative starting to unravel. Not explode, just unravel. By the end of the second month, the shift wasn't loud. It was pragmatic. Her lease renewal came up, and from what I heard, she tried to negotiate the rent down. The landlord didn't budge. The Atlanta real estate market couldn't care less about glow-ups. She had always presented the apartment as ours. But I was the one who had pushed for the upgrades, the better Wi-Fi, the stable utility plans, and the renter's insurance. Without that steady background work, things started slipping. A mutual friend mentioned that she had complained about everything suddenly seeming too expensive. I made no comment. At work in Austin, my life had stabilized quickly. I had a new team, a structured schedule, a real salary, health insurance, and a routine that wasn't tied to someone else's mood or social calendar. I didn't post anything about it. Apparently, that was the part that bothered her, because I wasn't spiraling publicly. I wasn't posting passive-aggressive messages. I wasn't trying to win. Silence doesn't give people anything to fight against. About 6 weeks after graduation, I received an email from an unknown address. Subject line, "Can we talk?" I knew who it was without opening it. I read it once. She wrote that she had been thinking a lot, that maybe things had escalated unnecessarily, that she never wanted it to end like this. She mentioned that she assumed I would at least check in on her after her beach trip. Assumed. That word again. She said she felt blindsided, which was interesting because I had been very clear about Austin for months. She just didn't think I would actually make that choice. I didn't reply to the email, not out of cruelty, but because reopening the line of communication destroys the boundary you've set. A week later, another mutual friend told me that Ryan had started dating someone else publicly. Tagged photo, soft launch caption. Apparently, Brooke had taken it hard. The future connections, Guy had connected elsewhere for his future, and for the first time, she didn't have a backup storyline making her look like she was in control. She had built a fairy tale around graduating, about moving on to something bigger. Instead, she had to face her responsibilities. From a distance, I felt no satisfaction, just confirmation. And then something happened that made the lesson even clearer. About 3 months after my move, something shifted publicly, not in the form of a dramatic meltdown, It was a slow, visible readjustment. Brooke made a long Instagram post about post-grad reality. It was curated, but with a noticeably different tone. No crown emojis, no talk of leveling up, just a caption about how transitions are harder than people are willing to admit. She mentioned unexpected changes, learning who truly supports you, and outgrowing past versions of yourself. There were a lot of comments, but one detail stood out. No one asked about me, not a single one. Where is Caleb? Since she had spent weeks quietly erasing me from the picture, that part didn't bother me. It was what followed that did. A mutual friend called me one evening to tell me that Brooke had reached out to ask if I was seeing someone new. I wasn't, but that wasn't the point. She didn't ask how I was doing. She didn't ask about my job. She asked if I had replaced her. That question was heavy with meaning because it revealed how she interpreted this whole situation. She assumed my silence meant I had moved on emotionally because someone else was filling the void. It never occurred to her that I had moved on because our dynamic was simply dysfunctional. A week later, she posted another story, less measured this time. Relationships in your 20s are crazy. People say forever and then disappear. Disappear. That word made things crystal clear. In her version of the story, I had vanished. In reality, I had been communicating for months. She just categorized everything that bothered her as drama. The most revealing update came from a friend who still worked at the company where she interned. Apparently, she had tried to pull some strings to land a job there after graduation. They passed. Ryan had recommended someone else. From what I heard, that hurt, because the fairy tale didn't just rely on me staying. It relied on everything falling into place effortlessly. And when it didn't, there was no one around to absorb the friction anymore. From Austin, I watch quietly. I don't check her page every day. I don't obsess over it. I just occasionally hear news like the weather forecast for a city I used to live in. And then, about 4 months after graduation, she did something that finally brought things full circle. She reached out one last time, not via email, not through a mutual friend, but through LinkedIn. Professional platform, public image, controlled tone. The message was short. Hi Caleb, I heard your job in Austin is going well. Congratulations. I've been thinking a lot lately. I handled some things immaturely. I hope you're doing well. No accusations, no reference to Ryan, no passive aggressiveness, just measured words. I read it twice, not because I didn't understand it, but because I understood it perfectly. Introspection usually shows up when reality catches up with us. From what I'd heard, she had taken a contract role in marketing. Nothing glamorous, not the dream offer she was hoping to land right after graduating. The apartment had been traded for a cheaper place on the other side of town. The friend group from the beach trip had already started drifting apart. Fairy tales are easy when someone else is absorbing the cost of the friction. It's harder when you're the one signing the lease and answering the calls. I didn't respond to her LinkedIn message, not out of bitterness, but because moving on doesn't require a dialogue once the lesson has already been learned. Later that week, I was promoted to a project manager position. Nothing flashy, just structured, stable merit. I didn't post anything about it. That was the final difference between us. She curated moments. I built foundations. Looking back, when she said she didn't want any drama, it meant she didn't want to take accountability. She didn't want to have to negotiate boundaries. She wanted everything to slide without having to adjust her behavior. So, I gave her exactly what she asked for. No drama, no arguments, no scene, just absence. She wanted her graduation to feel like the start of something greater. Instead, it became the first time she had to stand on her own without a silent safety net behind her. From afar, I don't feel any resentment. I feel clarity. Sometimes, the most dramatic move is to not do anything loud at all. She didn't want any drama. Got it. And that was the end of the story. Comment. I wanted to take a moment to reflect on the quiet power of choosing peace over conflict. Setting healthy boundaries is never about punishing someone else, but about protecting your own well-being and self-respect. We often mistake silence for weakness when it is actually a profound display of emotional maturity. True growth requires us to take full accountability for our actions and the way we treat the people who support us. Healing begins the moment we stop trying to force others to understand our worth. You have every right to walk away from environments that require you to shrink yourself just to keep a fragile peace. Kindness does not mean absorbing endless disrespect, and closure does not always require a final argument. I hope this reflection encourages you to build your life based on solid foundations rather than just focusing on outward appearances. Remember that walking away quietly is sometimes the most powerful declaration of your own value. Please share your thoughts below on how you prioritize your inner peace and handle boundaries in your own life. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.